So I'm having some issues with rust and such getting in the tank, and it's getting in my filter and clogging it up. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the fuel pump out, disassemble it, pull the fuel filter out, and clean up everything. And I figured I would go ahead and give you a walkthrough of how that works. This is a Suzuki SV1000S that I'm working on, and I'll kind of walk you through the whole process other than pulling the tank off. As you can see, the tank's already off, but I'm going to clean it all out, clean the filter, and I'm going to repaint it and such while I've got it apart. At this point, I have drained all of the gas out. I have filled up my gas can, as well as some other, you could see some other makeshift containers. It's not going to stay in there for long, so it shouldn't be a big deal. And I'm going to filter that fuel whenever I put it back in to make sure there's no rust or anything that I'm putting back into the tank. So far, I've gotten the tank off, and I've taken the cap off of it, which is 3 Allen screws that connect that cap. And now we're going to pull the fuel pump out and start cleaning. Okay, so on the underside of your tank, you've got this little heat shield here, and it's just held on by a few clamps. So I'm going to grab this clamp here, fold it all the way back over the pump housing here, fold these guys back, and you can just lift it up. You got to watch out, your fuel line passes through this section, and let me get this part off first. You can slide it up, and there's a hole here for your pump wiring to come out of. So that's that. So now we've got 6 Allen head bolts here that we're going to pull off next. And these guys are held on with a 5mm Allen wrench, or Allen head. And just remember the position of this little clamp here. It goes, I can't really tell you which position it's in, but it's this bolt right here that it connects to. It needs to go back there for everything to line up properly. And all of these bolts are the same. It doesn't matter which one goes where. The clamp just kind of slides over the bolt, and that's the only thing to remember is where that goes. When you pull your pump out, it's going to feel like it's going to try to catch on one side. So the end of the housing here at the very end has got, it sort of gets larger, and it's all plastic, but however it does fit exactly through the housing if you do it right. If it's at a slight angle or something, it might try to catch, but if you pull it straight out, it should be fine. And this is our pump assembly that we're going to be taking apart. Basically what we need to do is, it's fuel. We need to get down into this section, which is basically the fuel pump comes down here, and this is a sump. The fuel filter sits in the bottom here, and that's what we need to clean out. So we're going to have to take some of these little screws out, lift the pump out of the sump, and then clean from there. And as you can see, we've got an O-ring here. It's what seals your fuel tank. You don't want to damage that. You can reuse it. I've reused this one a couple of times. I don't have any issues. You just want to make sure it's clean. You want to make sure it's not damaged. You want to put a little bit of oil on it when you reassemble everything. Let me just check something real quick. Yeah, that's what's in my tank that I've got to get cleaned out. Last time I just kind of used the solution that sits in here and breaks up the rust and dissolves it and everything, and kind of worked. It got a lot of stuff out, but apparently it loosened up more that clogged it up. So I'm going to go old school this time. I'm going to throw some bolts and washers in there and swish it around some to break up the big pieces and make sure I've got everything loose out. Rinse out the tank, and then whenever I put the pump and everything back in after it's clear, hopefully that'll work. Yeah, I can already see it breaking up some of that nasty stuff in there. Hindsight says I probably should have counted those before I put them in there. It'll be all right. We'll get them out. Maybe we will. I've got a few magnets I can throw down in there. And you can see that's what's coming out. Yeah, I think that might be causing some issues. So I've made myself just a small clean work surface here so I can start taking things apart. Try to remember how to do this. So I know we have to remove these clips here. It's just a Phillips screw holding this on. As you can see, this little piece of metal mounts to the bracket and this piece of plastic's on the pump, so this piece has to slide off. We've got to get those out of the way. There's one on each side. And this piece here, after it's unbolted, will slide off. You've got to take a 7mm nut here on the bottom. I use a wrench for it because it's hard to get a socket on there. Okay, and there is a lock washer, and under the wire there's also one of these little star washers to help it grab. I'm going to make sure you keep up with those. And then this piece will just, there's a little catch it slides into here. So I'll show you. So this piece of metal is slid through this little catch. Slide that out, and then just lift it up, and it comes out once everything's unbolted. Now you want to free up the fuel pressure regulator. Fuel pressure regulator is here. There's this piece of white plastic that mounts on it. It's got a clip on this side. You just lift it, and it pops off. So basically, it clamps this way and holds on here. It's just got a little tab it catches in here. So lift this off, it'll pop off. Nothing will break. If you want to clean your fuel pressure regulator at this point, you can just pull it out. So it's got an O-ring seal here. Whenever you put that back in, just put some oil on that. It's always good to take this out and just check it, make sure nothing's gotten into it if you've got some issues with trash. Because if something gets past that filter, it will stop up your fuel pressure regulator, screws up your fuel pressure, will make the bike run crappy. So this should be everything. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm going to take these little clamps off. They just slide over the top because those will come off when we slide the pump off. If we don't, and those are the same, you don't have to keep up with which one is which. This is still connected to the pump. That's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so now we can just slide our pump out. It's going to be in there pretty snug. Oh. When it lets go, it'll probably just, yeah. Oh wait, we do have to undo that one. That one's connected there. So let's take off that wire. That was almost bad. I should have known better. Should have just taken that off to start with. In cases like this, like if you don't know exactly what to take off, it's always better to take off more than less. This is the same situation with this wire. You've got the nut. You've got a lock washer right there that came off, and you've got that little star washer on the base. Save those guys. Okay, now our pump is free. And yeah, it's pretty nasty. Not as bad as it was before. So I do hope that this is actually my issue. This is the filter here. You can see it's really nasty. I hope this is the issue. But this filter, it's got two little clips on the sides. Just lift those plastic clips off, and that's sort of the retainer that holds it on. Set that off to the side, and then your filter should just slide out of the bottom. There you go. There's another rubber seal on there too. So there's three parts to the filter. So at this point, you can just kind of clean everything up, reassemble. You know, pay attention to your O-rings, make sure everything's still sealed, and you know, go from there. So that's what I'm going to do now, is clean this stuff up. I'll kind of show you the inside there. That's what that sump looks like. You can see it's got some corrosion in it. It's got a lot of rust sitting down there at the bottom. Last time I cleaned it, there was actually more than that. So I'm hoping that this is my issue and I don't have something bigger going on that's not a fuel delivery issue. I might have to replace a manifold or something, but for now we're focusing on this. So we've got everything cleaned up. Basically I used a little bit of carb cleaner toothbrush, soft bristles. You can scrub stuff with that. The only thing you have to kind of be careful with when using carb cleaner is these O-rings. If they sit in carb cleaner for a long time, it can degrade them. So after you spray stuff, if you can avoid spraying the O-rings, do that. If you can't avoid it, just be sure to wipe them off when you're done. We're going to re-oil all those O-rings and stuff before we reassemble everything, make sure everything seals up good. In order to do that, we just got a little bit of 10W30, just a touch. I'm going to put it in a little cap, and I'll just rub it on with my finger, make sure everything's nice and oiled up while we're reassembling. And the stuff that I cleaned, so I cleaned the inside of my sump here to get any sort of loose particles out. That's what I use my brush for. I also cleaned this outlet, or excuse me, the outlet from the fuel pump, to make sure that everything, anything that may have been caught in this line was cleaned out. I cleaned the filter inside and out, so I sprayed through here. I also sprayed around the outside, and you want to move this around. This is actually kind of a multi-layer filter, so you want to make sure you move it around, get everything you can out. Some stuff isn't going to come out because it's trapped between the layers and stuff, but that's okay. You just want to get the majority of it out to make sure it's mostly clean. I cleaned the fuel pressure regulator, just sprayed in this port and this port and make sure everything was clear. On the pump itself, I sprayed through the pump pickup, as well as the outlet and the fuel pump regulator outlet here, or the inlet here for the fuel pump regulator. And I didn't see any trash or anything in any of those openings, but I cleaned them anyway just to be sure. Okay, so now we can start reassembly. I'll go ahead and start with the fuel pump regulator, or fuel pressure regulator, sorry. Just put a little bit of oil on that seal to make sure it's going to slide in easily. And just push that in. It should slide in easily with oil on it. And now we need to put our filter back on the bottom of the pump. And again, the way this guy sits is you've got this little circle. It goes on this pin in the middle, so it sits this way. Not a big deal, but you do have to put your other retaining clips and everything on. And what I'm going to do, this probably isn't going to matter, but I'm going to put some oil on this little rubber piece that goes around the filter. And mainly, I'm just doing this to protect it, make sure it doesn't dry out or anything. But if it's got any sealing properties or anything like that, this will help. Where's this guy go? This guy connects to the plastic piece like so. You can see these two little alignment pieces, and then these both go over like so. So as you can see, we've got the filter, the rubber piece, and the clip, and they all kind of go on like that. And we just align it with our pump. Make sure your filter is slid on all the way, so we're going to make sure that seats, and then we can squeeze down and seat the rest of it. So that is all seated. You want to make sure these two clips connect solidly. Make sure these two clips here connect solidly, and that's it. The filter should be on there really well. All right, we've got our clamp that goes over the fuel pump regulator. You just hook it on this side, and then just put a little pressure on it, and it'll clip right here, hold into place. And that should be everything we do before we slide it back into the sump and the holding piece here. Again, another O-ring. We're going to put some oil on here. Make sure that's good to go. And your alignment of your pump, you can always tell you've got a sort of a long guide here. You've got a short guide here, which aligns with the long piece and the short piece of metal. But also your outlet aligns with your outlet, which is right here in your pump. So I'm going to start it on this guide, slide it down just slightly, make sure it aligns with this guide on this side. Okay, so now those are aligned, and then we're going to watch our O-ring here, slide it down, put a little bit of oil in here just to make sure that can slide in easily. Let's try that again. Align one side. Also, you want to make sure your filter is going in there right. Align the other side, watch your O-ring. There we go. So you want to make sure that everything seats fully to the bottom, no movement, and everything looks good to go. So that is reconnected. Now we can start reconnecting all the pieces we took off to disassemble it. So first off, let's go ahead and get this ground wire over here. So we're going to slide our little clip back on. So these clips, they're threaded on the back side. So you can see there's a little bit of a hump. I hope you can see that. There's a little bit of a hump where the threads are on this side. This goes in toward the pump. So the flat side goes out. And you just slide that on. You've got this clip here. You just slide it over the top. And then that gives your screws something to bite on. And then we just put the wire right there on top. Slide your screw through. And tighten it down. Make sure it doesn't cross thread. That one tried to cross thread on me. There we go. Now it's right. Nice and snug. And the other side, we're actually going to run this wire this way first. This piece here, which is, I believe this is your level gauge, maybe? Honestly, you know, I'm not sure what that is. But either way, you can put that on. It just slides. There's this little piece here. This slides into it. This wire that runs down, this blue wire, goes behind it. Actually, you know what? We're going to go in front of it and take the easy way out. I thought it went behind it, but I think it might go in front. Yeah, that'll work. And again, we've got our clip that goes on there. And these are the two Phillips screws that go into the little guide pieces here. Huh, not wanting to start. Let's see why. Looks like our pump might not be all the way down, which could be the issue. I'm just going to push that down a little bit more. Maybe that'll align better. Okay, so we've started the screw now. Just got to align it, make sure it's not going to cross thread. There we go. So what I had to do there, I just had to put a little bit of pressure on the pump to pull it this way, to give a little bit more room at the bottom of this clip, because the clip hits the plastic here. So that was my issue. Now to reconnect our wires, thing to remember, the blue wire with this little coil around it goes on this lug here, and this little metal piece, the wire coming off the bottom of it that we just connected, goes on this first one. So remember the order of all of our pieces. Star washer goes on first, then our cables, and there's a lock washer. We'll use our 7mm to tighten those down. While you do want these snug, you want to be sure you're not causing stress on your wires there, because that would be bad if you damaged one of your wires while you were tightening this down. So that is your reassembled fuel pump. The only thing left to do, slide this back into the tank, and the thing to remember is just make sure you orient your outlet to the correct side of the tank, where your plug goes and all. So these bolt holes should help you do that. But basically these two wires here go toward the nose of the tank, toward the front of the tank. And then everything should align. You bolt it back down. Be sure you put your little clamp for your heat shield back in the right place. Be sure to oil the O-ring that's on the tank so that this seals properly. And reassemble everything, put your tank back on, and you should be good to go.